Hopefully by now you are convinced that collective action is a really important variable in understanding all sorts of political outcomes that we really care about, whether it's revolution or the unequal representation of different groups in society through interest groups. Here we are going to consider how to overcome collective action problems, and specifically we're talking about the free rider problem. And we're going to base this upon the thinking of one really influential political scientist and economist, and his name is Mancur Olson. And he sort of wrote the seminal piece on this, the most important thinking on this, even still today, even though this is a few decades old now. And he really came up with 4 different strategies that we might think about using when there is a collective action problem at hand and when you want to increase collective action. So the first of these is simply that smaller groups are going to be easier to organize when they're more specialized, when they share a more distinct interest. They're going to be more likely to be able to take collective action. Now think back to the idea of the distinction between concentrated and diffuse costs and benefits, and you can see that this is very much in line with Olson's first point. The idea here is that when you have a smaller group, it's going to just be logistically easier to organize them, but also, and this is where we hook up with that idea of concentrated costs and benefits, when you have more specialized groups, these smaller groups, they are going to perhaps feel similar effects much more strongly, and so they might be much more easy to organize, not just logistically, but also in terms of the incentives that they have to organize in the first place. Another idea is the provision of selective benefits. So if we think back to what a public good is in the first place, it's really defined by being non-excludable. That is, if I have access to the public good, you have access to the public good, regardless of whether either of us or both of us or neither of us took part in providing that public good, whether or not we were free riders. The idea that Olson is proposing here is that you need to come up with some sort of actual bonus for taking part in the collective action. So perhaps you're not going to necessarily get, more of the public good that is brought about by collective action than you would have if you were a free rider, but perhaps the organizers of a certain cause or interest or movement could find ways to provide selective benefits. These are selective benefits that are only provided to people who take part, right? And so free riders might still get some of the public good, but they don't get whatever goodie this is. You can think of this as sort of like when the public broadcasting people, PBS or NPR, they try to keep the public good of this news and programming organization alive with a fundraiser. Whether or not you donate, you're going to have access to NPR and PBS. They're the free, publicly available news channels. But they are going to try and give out lots of tote bags for people that do donate. So that you can sort of show, look, I donated to this. I'm proud of this. Of course, lots of different organizations do this to try and say, look, we're providing a public good. And most of the time, organizations believe that they're providing a public good, even if we might disagree with them, right? Of course, the NRA and Every Town for Gun Safety are going to have very different views upon the role that the state should or should not play in regulating the uses of fire, the ownership of firearms. However, they both are going to argue that they're trying to fight gun violence, and they're trying to have a healthier, safer place to live. So they believe they're bringing about this public good, and they're going to try and provide selective benefits, right? So the NRA is going to provide you with membership benefits for supporting that organization. You might just get bragging rights, whatever it is. The idea here is that you can try and come up with selective benefits above and beyond the public good that can encourage people to take part, not to free ride, but on the contrary, to really roll up their shirt sleeves, get their hands dirty, start taking action. The flip side of this same coin is force. So this is sort of if providing selective benefits is the carrot, the idea of coercion or the use of force is the stick. This is the idea that, well, we need people to take part in this public good, and so we are going to punish those that do not take part in the public good. The easiest way for us to think about this, and the example that we've seen a couple of times, is the state, and how the state is going to use coercion to force us to pay taxes in order to then have the state provide public goods. So the state needs funds and resources, and if it's going to do things like build infrastructure and roads, fund schools like Fort Lewis College. However, it is a lot easier for us as individual citizens to shirk. It's a lot easier for us to free ride. So the state comes along and says, I am the Leviathan. If you do not pay taxes, I will throw you right in jail. And that coercion forces us to pay our taxes, which allows for the provision of public goods. Now, if you have other sorts of public goods, you might think of ways that, if you're not the state, you don't have the sovereignty and the power of the state, you might still be able to think of ways that different actors can provide some coercion to get people active, to get people participating and taking part, and again, overcoming that free rider problem. Olson's last strategy is the idea that big and powerful interested parties can often just take action and sort of nullify the collective action problem in the first place. Not because they got everybody else to take part, not because they actually overcame the free rider problem, but because they are just so influential and so powerful when it comes to this issue that them taking action actually just sort of makes everybody else take action, or just changes the situation so that it doesn't really matter what anybody else does anyway. When we talk about international relations, sometimes we're going to see that the United States is such a huge power militarily, economically, culturally, in terms of its treaties and alliances, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that a lot of the time a huge actor like the United States is going to sort of either take action or not take action, and what that one actor does is a lot more important than what a lot of much smaller actors does. In the case of states within the US, so here I mean states like Ohio and Colorado, sometimes when one of the hugest states, especially California, does something, it has effects on everybody else. And so if you think about a lot of regulations, when the state of California passes a regulation on an industry, let's say they pass a regulation on how emissions systems, or mufflers have to be manufactured. That is such a huge piece of the US market. Sometimes manufacturers just decide to go ahead and change it. So it doesn't matter if every single state gets on board and actually passes regulations and does X, Y, and Z. Sometimes one actor is just so big that by virtue of them taking action, the problem sort of goes away. So these are 4 ways that we can think about collective action and overcoming collective action. Of course, there are other strategies you could try, but these are sort of tried and true, and scholars and policymakers and citizens have applied these tactics to all sorts of collective action problems when they've had a goal of providing a public good and really needed to get people involved to keep people from being free riders. So we're going to apply this in this class to an interest of your choice. So think about this and think about what you think is a problem in need of public action, and which of these strategies might work best for overcoming that collective action problem. As always, get in touch with any questions, comments, or concerns. I'll really look forward to hearing from you on the message boards so we can see what interests you are passionate about, and where you think we could overcome collective action problems and exactly how you could. So like I said, get in touch with any questions, concerns, or comments, and have a wonderful day.